back to the topic of project management. Today we will learn about the important aspect of project management, which is the project organization.
In the project monitoring, in complement with the previous method that we already learned in project monitoring, that is CPM and PERT, let's discuss several things that is important in project monitoring. In the previous video, we already learned in detail about the CPM and PERT method that is complement each other. So in here, the advantage of CPM and PERT, we said that a graphical network may help in highlight the relationship among the project activity, like we practiced before, that when we make the graphical network, it help us to illustrate, help us to understand which one is critical, which one is not critical, which one we should crash first, which one it is not, and so on. And then the critical path and select time or allowance time analysis help to pinpoint activity that we need to closely watch. So when we understand the critical path and the activity, which activity that is critical, so we need to pay an attention, we need to closely watch those activity. Do not let that activity do not make those activity late, because lateness in the critical path will cause the lateness in the whole project. The project documentation and graphic that is point out who is responsible for that activity. In the project documentation, we know that this activity, there's a person in charge for those activities. So we can point out when there is some problem with those activities, for example, delay of those activity, we can point out who's responsible for this activity and handle it. And the CPM and PERT is applicable to any kind of project, not only limited in the manufacturing or construction. And CPM and PERT is useful in monitoring not only schedule but also, this is the time schedule, but also the cost. So we can monitor the cost using the CPM. Even though those two methods has many advantages, but CPM and PERT also has a limitation. Number one, limitation of the CPM and PERT is that the project activities must be clearly defined. So when we cannot define the project activities, that it is impossible to use the CPM and PERT. So each project activity is independent each other and stable in their relationship. So the network diagram is stable, not changing dynamically over time. So this is the limitation of CPM and PERT. The second, the precedent relationship must be specified and networked together. And we understand earlier, we already understand before the project start about this precedent relationship. Time estimate tend to be subjective. So the time estimate, because this is the characteristic of the project, this is always new. So the work is always new. It's different with the previous ones. So the time estimate is based on the historical data. It's difficult to get the historical data for each activity. So usually we estimate the time based on the expert judgment. Number 4 is there is an inherent danger of too much emphasis being placed on the longest or the critical path. So in CPM and PERT, we always emphasize to pay an attention to the critical path. Yeah, but there's a possible danger when we only pay an attention to the critical path, because since the time is subjective, there is a maybe possibility that this activity that is not on the critical path is actually critical path, because our prediction was wrong before. So putting all our resources, putting all our attention 100% to the critical path is not always good. So we need to pay an attention also to the activities that is lies in the non-critical path. There are several project management tools that we can use, in here. For example, the number one is a Gantt chart. We see in here, this is the example of the Gantt chart. This is Gantt chart over here, and then there is a timeline chart. So this is timeline starting from, for example, we see there is a kickoff in here, there is checkpoint in here, another checkpoint over there, and the project will wrap up on this date, for example, in August. And then we will see this PERT chart. What is the PERT chart? In here we can see the time estimate for each activity, and the task dependency. So this is the PERT chart and the work breakdown structure chart. So the task, we can divide it into further subtasks and then subtasks and so on. So this is the work breakdown structure chart. In project monitoring, the purpose of project monitoring is we need to measure the actual performance against the planned performance. The assessment of the performance to determine whether we need any corrective or preventive action. So when we find out that the plan and actual performance is different, so what should we do? So the project manager has to do some actions so that the actual performance is equal or the same with the planned performance. The status is reported and appropriate risk response plan are being executed. So in project monitoring, we have to make sure that any progress of the activity in the project is reported. And when there is some problem related with those activity, the risk response plan, based on the previous document that we made, we have to execute those plans. And then in project monitoring, we provide information to support status reporting, progress measurement, and also forecasting. When there is something changed, for example, the activity time is changed or cost time is changed due to some pandemic, for example, and then we need to provide information to support about what is the situation that happening on the field and how we can progress and what is the forecast for the future based on the current situation. And monitoring the implementation of the approved change as they occur. So when we implement some adjustment, so we can also monitor the change. In project monitoring, we need certain input, for example, the project management plan that consists of time, performance, cost, and then there is a schedule forecast. This is project time management and cost forecast. So this is project cost management. The output of the project management is there is a change request, which means how we can augment the project management plan based on the current situation. And the second is work performance report. This means the current work performance report. The third one is what we call it the update of the project management plan based on the current situation, based on the change request and work performance report. We need to update the project management plan. And lastly, this update we put it out in the project document update. So thank you so much for joining me in the discussion of the project monitoring. See you again in the other video.
Thank you so much for joining me in Learning Operation Management. See you again in the next video.